Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zack, and today I am driving a 2010 Ford Explorer XLT. Up front is a 4.0 liter V6, and down below is a 5-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this Ford Explorer for two reasons. First of all, I really like this generation of Ford Explorer, and I've only reviewed one other one. That was the V8 Eddie Bauer edition. That was a 2009. And so this is a more everyman version. The XLT was kind of their volume seller, and the V6 was a little bit more common because they are a little bit more fuel efficient, a little bit more downgrade of an engine from the V8. So I'm excited to share that stuff with you here today. But the second reason is the fact that I think this car is really simple, and I think we can learn a lot of things from taking this 16-year retrospect on the Ford Explorer. But if you'd like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. And if you'd like to see all my videos weeks or sometimes months in advance, you can head on over to my Patreon for only $5 a month. But let's get back to that 4-liter Cologne V6 under the hood. Well, as I mentioned, that was one of two engines available. It was either the 4-liter Cologne V6 or the 4.6-liter modular V8. Now, this makes 210 horsepower, where the V8 would have made 292. So you're losing out on about 82 horsepower going down to the V6. However, the Cologne V6, named after its engine plant in Cologne, Germany, is actually a really reliable engine. We saw these in the earlier 2000s Ford Rangers. They're not very fuel efficient, but they are pretty stout, and they do their job really well, especially here in the Ford Explorer. As long as you're not towing, you don't really need the V8, and you're going to benefit at the pump a little bit as well. Now, like I said, paired to it is a 5-speed automatic transmission. Now, that is dependent on which engine you got, because if you went to the 4.6 modular V8, you actually got a 6-speed automatic. So, something to note there. The 5-speed was for the V6, 6-speed for the V8. There you go. And it's shifting fine enough. It's a traditional transmission. It's a little lazy, but it does the job, and it's just not a dreaded CVT. Last but not least, this particular XLT Explorer is 4-wheel drive. However, you could have found them in 2-wheel drive that actually made them rear-wheel drive at the V6 level, but when you went up to the V8, you got all-wheel drive as standard. How does it feel to drive the Ford Explorer XLT? It's nice. It's comfortable. The suspension is a little bit bouncy, a little bit harsh. However, you have to remember that this is 16 years old and has 177,000 miles on it, so it's not a spring chicken. I'm sure it doesn't ride quite like it used to, but it still rides pretty well for having that much mileage on it and having that much time passed. Visibility is fine, it's regular SUV stuff, and all the inputs are good. Throttle response is good, steering is light enough that I can maneuver it easily, and that's all I would really want out of a car like this. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 4 gauges. Off to the left is my tachometer and coolant temperature, and off to the right is the speedometer and fuel. On the steering wheel, off to the left, we do have our cruise control settings, and off to the right, we have our seek and skip track, volume, phone options, and media options. And off to the left, we have a climate control vent. We have our headlight switch and gauge dimmer switch, as well as our power mirror adjustments are actually on the door. Kind of an odd placement here, but that's where they put it in the Explorer. Down below that, we have our power windows, power locks, and our latch to get in and out, which is this sort of curved circular handle. I'm sure this would have felt very futuristic for 2010, but here it just seems normal-ristic, modern. I don't know. Seems fine now. Moving into the center, we do have an aftermarket radio. We have 2 climate control vents, and we have our traction control button, our 4-wheel drive settings. So push button 4-wheel drive here for the Ford Explorer. Very nice, super easy. 4-wheel drive auto, high and low. Our climate controls, fan speed off to the left, temperature in the center, wear to center off to the right, defrost and AC. We have our pedal adjustments, and we do have heated seats. No different levels of heated seats. It's just a one-size-fits-all, or a one mode heats all, which is fine. I'm just happy to have heated seats at all, so I won't complain here in the Explorer. Then we have the shifter in the center. The shifter is tall and mighty and really reminds me of aftermarket shifters that you would find like in a tuner car in the 2010s. They used to make and sell these like super large acrylic shift knobs, and you put them in your 240SX and seem cool. That's what this feels like. Very tall and in charge. We have our overdrive button on the side, and that is it. Off to the right, we do have cup holders, so we will do a big freaking bottle test, and it is no prayer of passing. This is actually a pretty small cup holder. I was kind of interested in that. There we have our sync powered by Microsoft badge. We have a 12-volt outlet and a little cubby, and we have a center console with a USB-A, aux-in, and 12-volt outlet. The seats are comfortable. They are a tan leather. They are heated and power, and I really, really like them. I think they work well as a sort of get-around SUV. They're not anything groundbreaking. They're definitely not what you would find in like a Escalade of the time. They're not super luxury, but they're presentable, comfortable, and do the job. However, speaking of seats, we do have 2 more rows of seating. So let's go do some backseat reviews in the Ford Explorer XLT. All right, so let's get into the back of the Ford Explorer. We do have a bench seat for the second row, as well as 2 more seats for the third row. But stepping in here, close the door, and there we go. My knees are coming close to hitting. They are touching the seat barely. This is a little bit further back than my normal driving position, so that's fine. I think the rear seat space is pretty good. I love the fact that the tan carries on back here. This is just so much better to look at than a black on black on black on black on gray on black interior. It's just so much more joyful just actually having colors and shades to look at. I absolutely love that. We do have 2 climate control vents down there. We can control it with that. We get a 12-volt outlet way down there. And we don't get a center console because we actually get a center seat. We have lights over my shoulder. Very, very nice to see those. And overall, I fit. Is this the most glorious, glamorous backseat I've ever been in? No. But again, the Explorer isn't the most glorious, luxury vehicle there was. And so this is right on par with that. Let's figure out, though, how to get into the third row. First, we pull this. Okay. And then number 2, we pull this. Number 3, we pull this. Oh, yep. That folds up. Okay, well, that gives us our access point to the third row. And there we go. We are in the third row. Is it stellar? No. For kids, this is going to work pretty well. We do have cup holders on either side. Interestingly, this cup holder and window is way up high. This window, you have quite the gap going down, so it's asymmetrical back here. I fit headroom-wise. Knee room is going to be a problem back here. However, this is for kids. These are if you need them seats. If you do have a big family, that's kind of what the Expedition was for at the time. That has a way better third row. But this is like if you have 2 kids and, a parent calls you and says, hey, I can't pick up Tommy from soccer practice. Can you pick up our kid or whatever? If you need them, the niece and nephews in town, pop the seats up, use the third row. It's there, it's accessible for kids, it's going to work. But if you are taking clients out to lunch and say, hey, yeah, all 8 of you hop into my Ford Explorer, might be a little awkward and a little not great. So that's my review of the third row. It works, it functions. I would say anyone really above the age of 15 probably isn't going to want to ride back here, but that's okay. Let's hop into the back. We'll take a quick look at how much cargo space is left. Spoiler alert, not much. And then we'll talk about the looks. All right, so around the back, we do have a glass release down here. So you actually hit it right here, and you can release just the glass. Absolutely love when SUVs do this. I think this is one of the coolest and best features that an SUV can have. However, right under the Ford badge, we have our main release for the tailgate. Now, obviously, once the third row is up, not great. But you pull this for cargo mode. Actually, sorry. You have to pull these down first. So pull that, and then you could pull the cargo mode. and fold these down, and now you have a ton of cargo space, as you would expect from a Ford Explorer. I would imagine most of these probably drive around like this, you know, with the big trunk. Super, super useful, but you do have those third row seats if you would like them. You can come down here. We have a little bit of storage down there, and it looks like we have some storage over here as well. So very, very nice. You get some netting over here. So you do have storage options around the back of the Ford Explorer. No power liftgate here on the XLT. Pull it back down, and there you go. Ford Explorer. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I do really like the look of this generation of Explorer. I have to say it's one of my favorite looks. I think it's simple. I think it's understated. I don't think it's trying to make this outward statement. It's very dignified, and it looks like an evolution of the Explorers from the 90s into the 2000s. You see that lineage there, sort of boxy for sure, but also at the same time, like, it's very handsome. And again, it doesn't look like it's trying to hand you a petition outside of a grocery store to beg you to donate to something. It's just an SUV that looks good, and that's really, really nice, and something that I think is lost in modern SUVs. I feel like every modern SUV is trying to make a statement, trying to do this, trying to do that, trying to make you think a certain way, and this Explorer just doesn't do that. It's very, very reserved, and I like that quite a bit. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving a Ford Explorer from 2010? I love it. As I mentioned with the looks, that sort of bleeds into my final thoughts segment. I like how reserved and just how straightforward this vehicle is. There's nothing in here that makes me feel like it's trying to push me in a certain way. It doesn't feel like the interior designers were trying to prove a point. It doesn't feel overly futuristic, besides the door handle, which I think was kind of a dumb decision. But besides that, everything else in here is just like, hey, we want to build a nice place to be for the owner, and that's it. I don't have a giant screen in here. Yes, I do have a screen, but that is an aftermarket screen. The original wouldn't have had this. It would have been buttons. And so there's no giant screen dominating the interior. I don't have head-up displays and cooled seats and color changing 64-way lights underneath the dash. No, it's very simplistic, but it's also young enough to have fuel injection and traction control and, you know, push-button four-wheel drive. It has these modern amenities while still being a little bit more classic, and I like that a lot. Now, I for sure romanticize this era. This was very quickly post-recession, and so there was a lot of rebuilding going on in the country and changing and things like that, but to me, I grew up in 2010, obviously. I grew up in 08, 09, 010, you know, things like that. But, like, I think 2010, I was in 6th grade. I was, like, really starting to come online and, like, become my own person and have a personality and have opinions and be a human being walking this earth. And so I look back at videos from that era, and yeah, they're in like 480p filmed on flip cameras, but there was just something so innocent and so light about that era that now driving a vehicle like this brings me right back to this era. I feel like I'm laying on the couch on summer break watching iCarly and eating mac and cheese. Like, that's what I used to do. Like, that's comforting to me, and that's what I feel in here. This has that warm sense of nostalgia, that macaroni styling and macaroni feeling where, yeah, things are gonna be okay. And being a naive child of not even knowing that the world is gonna blow up, you know, that's how I feel in here. Everything is fine. Everything is gonna be okay. Maybe it's not the best riding car I've ever driven. Maybe it's not the fastest. Maybe it can't tow the most. But for the time being, when I'm behind the wheel of this Ford Explorer, everything's okay. We're getting by. We're making it work. You know, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. No matter how far, there is a light. And that's what I'm focusing on here in the Ford Explorer. I'm sure my parents will tell you a different story. I'm sure my dad was unemployed for a while during the recession, and it was tough. It was hard. I'm sure they tell a different story of 2010. But for me, that was like such a pivotal year in my life and my upbringing that now being in here, this brings back those warm feelings. I remember in 2010 was the first time I ever texted with a girl. It was crazy. Best moment of my life up to that point. I was making YouTube videos even back in 2010, and they were just fun, silly skits. It wasn't a job like it is now, and as much as I'm so fortunate to have this job and wonderful to have this job, it is a job, and I don't get to make videos just for fun. I have to make videos that I think will do well and earn money, and I have to use the money from those videos to pay my rent, to pay my insurance, to pay for food. And so there is a sort of innocence around this Ford Explorer that I just gravitate towards. And that's what I really, really like about this era and this car specifically. It's not anything special. It's not anything too flashy, but it works. It gets you there. And it's just a little brief sigh of relief. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Jermaine for letting me borrow his Ford Explorer XLT. He's been absolutely wonderful to work with. I have filmed so many of his cars over the last year or so I always appreciate when he messages me about his newest purchase and has me out to film it. I'm sure this isn't the last time I'll be here. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.